Hi buddy, Iman here from Digital Matter. Today we'll be talking about creating assets on Telematics Guru. I recommend having a read through this article first. It goes through great detail and goes through a couple of examples. Now, to get started on creating assets, you will need to go onto the Telematics Guru platform, go into the Assets tab and click on Manage Assets. You'll be presented a view that looks something like this. If this is your first time using the Telematics Guru platform, you wouldn't see your assets on here. You would need to create a new asset for each of your devices. Now, there are a couple of ways of doing this. I guess the most simple and basic way of doing this is to go into create new asset, and you'll be greeted with a dialog that looks like this. There are a couple of fields that you could fill, but the compulsory ones are the name and the device serial. So for example, we can do something like demo, and I'm just picking a random serial here. And if I click out of the box, the platform will automatically identify what device type this serial number is. So in this case, it's a Remora 2. Now, you have a couple of fields that are optional that include things like department and projects. This might help you better identify what sort of asset we're talking about here. We have a couple of tabs on top that do different things. And so the first tab would be info. If you want to add some information, let's say you're working with a vehicle tracker, you might want to add the vehicle manufacturer and the model year or the registration number. The next tab is the photo tab. You can add a picture of the vehicle or asset itself and set an asset color. The next tab is alerts. So we have a whole sort of dialog system or a tab under the admin settings for alerts where you can set up different alert profiles, and if you want to be notified via email, SMS, or the mobile app or via the mobile app. You can link different assets when you go through the admin settings and using the alerts tab. But here is a quick way of doing things where you might already have an existing alert profile and you just want to link a particular asset that you are creating at the moment to a particular alert profile. So in this case, I could say that my Remora 2, I want a notification every time the battery is low. You just click on that and press save. The next tab is installer. So for quality assurance, for example, you might want to know who the installer was and the install date. The next tab is advanced. Over here, you can change a few things, including the active verb. And what that means is that when a vehicle tracker is moving, we may use the verb driving. And that's the word that we would use on the line map to identify the state. Whereas if you're working with a animal tracker and you're trying to track sheep, using the word driving wouldn't be appropriate. You might say something like moving or walking, for example. The next tab is I/O mappings, and here you can decide whether things like the battery voltage would be displayed on the live map or the trip history. You can just disable or enable them. And what's useful over here is that, for example, you can add more digital mappings. An example over here would be you might have a digital mapping for a seatbelt and the seatbelt state, whether it's plugged in or not. And you can do that here. Next one is log events. This might be for vehicle trackers where you want to log a speeding event or speeding events. This would be quite useful. We have more information about speeding and so on in other articles. The next tab is drivers. So certain vehicle trackers you might plug that in with a RFID fob to identify who the driver is, and based on that, immobilize certain vehicles at different periods of time. You can permanently allocate a particular driver. So in this case, my vehicle is only driven by myself. So I would say it's only Iman, and you press save. The next tab is linked geofence. This is more of an advanced feature around geofencing, and we have great documentation talking about this later on. And the final tab over here is maintenance. This is similar to the alerts where You have other dialogues and tabs under the admin settings where you can create maintenance and alert schedules. On the fly, on the spot, you can link a particular asset that you're creating to a particular schedule or a profile. And once you've configured everything, you can just press save and that will save it to the system. Now, there are other ways to create new assets, and you can do something like create new from existing. The benefit of doing this is that you can use an existing asset as a template, which makes your life easier because you don't have to configure each and every tab or each and every parameter for another asset that you are creating. So over here, I might create an asset based on my Kia Bolt, my Bolt 2 tracker. And it's already been pre-filled saying that the asset type is already a vehicle. And I have previously mentioned that my Kia Bolt is under the business meetings project, for example. The next button that we could talk about is bulk update. And I can just select a couple of assets. And the benefit of doing the bulk update is that instead of updating the project type or an asset type individually for certain assets, you can just update them all at once. So over here, we can just make all of these a more asset, for example, and we just press save and they've all been updated. Now, if we open up the Dart3, we should see that the asset type has been changed. Another way of creating new assets is by going into the admin tab and clicking on bulk import. This is a way of importing multiple assets at once and creating them. You would need to download a template that looks something like this. And using this template, you fill out all the fields, upload that in the system, and it's just a quicker way of importing multiple assets at one go. One thing I forgot to mention previously is that when you have an asset and we go into something like the info tab or the general tab and we have all these fields are actually exportable in the reports. So if you create an asset and the asset type is mover, it will be represented in the reports that you can print later on. So yeah, that's how you create new assets.